All right, I'm joined here today with my good longtime friend, Martin Faridian. Brother, we've known each other for a long time. You do like consciousness coaching, spirituality stuff, guided meditations, a lot of stuff. I'll let you kind of touch on that. But first of all, just thanks for being here. I'm really excited to explore the topic today of breaking out of the matrix, which is something that we're both super passionate about. So first of all, just like thank you for being here, bro.
Yeah, and thanks for hosting and starting this podcast, a platform for us to share our stories, share our voices. We were in the trenches ourselves, in the
Yeah.
rat race. We realized something isn't right here, took a big leap of faith, and now we're kind of pursuing our dreams that we've always wanted to. Now we can help other people who are maybe trapped in that mindset and want to break free.
So before we go into that, I mean, it's you're already touching on like your personal story of breaking free and stuff. Let's start at the very beginning, right? Because anyone listening to this might be like, what is breaking free? What is the matrix? What are these guys even talking about? How would you define that? And yeah, what does breaking free from the matrix even mean?
Yeah, so for me, the matrix is when you're caught inside of this grid and you have this routine. You wake up early, you get ready for work, you sit in traffic, you go to work. The whole day, you're just like a zombie slaving away under a ton of stress. Everything you do is making the company tons of money and you're getting compensated peanuts. You drive home in traffic, maybe you go to the grocery store, you buy some food, you put gas in your car, you eat your meal, and then by that time you clean up dishes, you look at the clock, it's almost 9 p.m. Maybe you watch some TV, you go to sleep, repeat. You do that
Hmm
5 days in a row. Weekend comes, all you do is rest. Maybe you see some friends, if you're fortunate. But it's just this loop where you're in a pattern, you're in a cycle, and you're not living for you anymore. Everything you're doing is for the betterment of this company. So, it's kind of funny. Like you go to work for, like let's say
Right.
$1 billion company, right? So you're
Yeah.
working for a billionaire, you're giving them all your life energy. They give you that money. You take that money, you give it to another billionaire who owns your house. You give it to another billionaire who owns the car company, another billionaire who owns the clothing stores. So you're just working for one billionaire and transferring the wealth to other billionaires, along the way for lights, electricity, everything in your life. You're just using your life force energy to help these other people make money off it. And then you start to feel deprived. You feel low energy. You're wondering what's the point of it all. And you're like, there's got to be more to life than this, right? So that's
hmm
kind of the matrix for me. How about you? What would you define as the matrix?
So I would say for me, what you said is a very specific version of the Matrix related to like sort of the 9 to 5 culture, corporate culture, which all of that's super nuanced. But I would say the Matrix in general is like social conditioning. It's what we are made to believe is the right path, right? And if you think about it, that doesn't make any sense because there's no such thing as right. It's only right for you or right for someone else. I think society programs us. I don't think I very much believe like, because as young kids, our brains are very malleable. So anything that comes into us when we're 1, 2, 3, 4 years old, we just accept as facts anything our parents say. So once we're a certain age, 10, 12, 15, like the whole model of the world as they have told us is already imprinted in our brain, and we just go about making our choices within the confines of that model. And so we think we're free. I think that's the greatest illusion is we think we're free, but like we're really not because we're only making the choices within the confines of the model that's been constructed for us already, not realizing that there's unlimited other choices outside of the model. And so I think for me, that's where breaking free comes from. It's like breaking free of the mental constructs and barriers that we think are limitations for us, which aren't.
Yeah, that's
Do
why
you think?
travel is so impactful and so important. Because what you grow up your whole life thinking is normal in one
That's
part of the
true.
world is totally abnormal in another part of the world. Like, for example, in the US culture, we look down upon people who nap after lunch. If you need a nap, we're like, you're lazy, get back to work. You go to Spain and everything is closed from 2 to 5 p.m. They go out for lunch, they have a nap, then they come back and open things up again. And that's normal to them. All these societal conditionings, that's just all it is. It's just conditioning. And when we're young, we just absorb everything because we're trying to understand what is this world around us. And we start following things and are being told this is the way, but it's not always the way. And, if you're feeling a little bit of dissonance, you feel like, hey, this isn't right for me. Like that's a sign that you're starting to wake up out of the matrix. And I know it's maybe a little bit early for a recommendation, but one book that really opened my eyes is the Toltec Principles, the Four Agreements.
Good one.
It talks about how like everything that you have been conditioned to is just a program. Everything in school, church, your family, it's
Yeah.
all just conditioning. And the first step is just realizing that. And it's really good philosophies. It's just four ways to kind of start questioning your reality and start to live a better life. I don't want to necessarily divulge it here because when you just say it, it doesn't land as well. But when you read it, the way
Mhm.
he sets each philosophy up is really, really eye-opening.
So, what was your breaking free moment? Was there like a moment where you feel like you first broke free of some kind of matrix?
Yeah, totally. So for the longest time, it just felt like, I was like, what am I doing in this life? I worked hard in high school to get good grades so I can get into college, work good in college so I can get into pharmacy school, work really hard in pharmacy school so I get a residency, so then I could get a good job. And then, I was doing all that and I'd been putting off my happiness for a long time. And I thought, well, once I have a house, then I can be happy. Once I have a job, then I can be happy. Once I have a relationship, then I can be happy. I had all those things. I had all the things that I've been working hard for my whole life. I'd been putting off my happiness, and I still wasn't happy. And this is right around the time of the pandemic. I'd worked hard to fulfill this American dream. I thought once I have all these things, everything else is going to fall into place. And I realized that no, those are just external pieces of this puzzle that I got to fill that internal void. And
Hmm.
during the pandemic, I had a lot of time to think. It was almost like we were under a pressure cooker. Like everything was just kind of building up, building up. And I realized like this relationship that I'm in is not helpful at all. It's actually a very toxic relationship. And we've tried so many different ways to fix it,
Hmm.
but fundamentally, we're different people. But everyone in my circle was saying, well, that's relationships are just like that. You have
Mm.
to sacrifice, it's hard work, it's never
Conditioning.
easy. Exactly. So I thought there was something wrong with me. And then I realized, like, you know what? I would rather just be single for the rest of my life than in this relationship that's like tearing me down every day. So
Hmm.
that was
Yeah.
like the first step is ending that. And now it's like, okay, well, where do I want to live? Am I going to move closer just to be, am I going to move to the other side of Phoenix just to be closer to this job that's slowly killing me, that's stressing me out? That's draining all my energy. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that either. So I was like, what do I want to do? And I was like, you know what? I just need to break out of this matrix that I'm in where I have this routine and I just need to go back into nature. So I'm just going to go
Mm.
camping. And I had no idea what I was going to do. I just said, I'm going to pack up my stuff and just go into nature. And my cousin was going through a similar thing at the time. I told him to come with me, and that was it. Like we just broke out of Phoenix, and it was like 120 degrees in the summer. And then we get to Colorado, it's like 65 degrees. We're in the
Oh,
mountains. There's
nice.
cool air. There's like a rainbow in the sky. And I'm like, wow, what was I doing in Phoenix? I didn't even realize I was like putting myself in a prison. They're like, there's so much more to this life
Mhm.
than just work. And I spent almost 2 months camping just in the
Really?
nature. Yeah, through Colorado, Yellowstone, Lake Tahoe, Yosemite, Crater Lake, Washington, all these amazing places. And I was just like, wow, like this is life, waking up every day and just going with the flow. Up until that point, every single minute of my day was like kind of planned for like you only have
Hmm.
certain hours a day, you have to do this before work, this after work, you have to see the family on the weekend. Like all my time was accounted for. I couldn't just wake up and go with the flow. So with camping, that's what I was able to do. It was a survivalist mentality, like where am I going to sleep tonight? What am I going to eat?
Hmm.
Connect to my roots. And I saw like all this beautiful intricacy in nature, like how it's all interconnected. It's not just like one tree trying to survive. It's part of this forest that also houses birds and worms and all these different animals. And they're all working together and it's all so perfect and flawless. And it's not just a coincidence, there's like a purpose to all this. So that was kind of part of my awakening. And then I had the
Mm.
opportunity to come to Brazil. And I was like, yeah, that's always been my dream. Like if I could just rewind like 4 months ago, I was actually really kind of depressed because I never did a study abroad program when I was in college because I was too busy. I didn't think I could afford it. I didn't want to like not be with my friends, but that was like my one chance to live in another country for months at a time and get immersed in the culture.
Mhm,
And
yeah.
now I'm working, all the time. I have to ask my boss for 1 week off. It's very hard to get 2 weeks off in a row. It has to coincide with my partner's time. We have a house, we have dogs. You can't just go live in another country.
Yep.
I was like, man, I missed my opportunity. This is my life now. So now this opportunity had come my way to go to Brazil. I was like, I gotta do it. I just gotta go and see what it is. Left my car in LA, bought a one-way ticket, and as soon as I got to Brazil, I was just like, holy moly, I can't believe this place, this beautiful island looked like something out of Jurassic Park. It just has mountains and trees and rivers and waterfalls and it's surrounded by beautiful ocean. And like coming from Arizona, I'm like, wow, this is paradise. And then the people here are amazing, the food is great, the lifestyle's amazing, the cost of living was affordable, and what I thought was just going to be a 3 week vacation turned into a 2 year stay in Brazil. I just tried to
Uh-huh.
make it work month at a time and I ended up staying 2 years and it was the best decision I ever made in my life and it just kind of showed me like the first step when I left my job was so scary. I was like jumping into the unknown. I had no idea.
Yeah.
I walked away from a six-figure pharmacy job that I worked my whole life to get to. I finally had a good schedule, which is really hard in pharmacy. You normally work nights, weekends, holidays, but I had a 4-day schedule, Tuesday through Friday, 4 10s. I had 3-day weekends. I had everything I'd worked hard for, and I was making a lot of money. And I was like, I'm leaving all that to go camping. Am I crazy?
Uh-huh.
You know, it was scary but exhilarating because I knew something was on the other end, and I was just like excited because emotionally I was at a low point. So I was like, it can only go up from here, and I'm so glad that I took that jump because my life really transformed for the better after that one step into the unknown, and I just started to trust my gut a little bit more, trust the
Mhm.
unknown, learn to surrender, learn to accept, and that's kind of been my journey thus far, and that's how I transitioned from pharmacy into spirituality and consciousness because that's always been the things that excite me the most. So,
Yeah.
I decided to turn around and help others with that. So, yeah, that's kind of my journey.
That's amazing, man. And we met in Brazil in
Yeah.
Florianopolis. I know exactly what you're talking about when you say the green, lush forest, the beaches, the ocean. It's just godly. One thing that you mentioned a few times throughout that story was jumping into the unknown, right? Jumping into something that's scary, or maybe letting go of something that you had invested a lot into, right? I think for the people listening, they might be wondering, like, hey, like I'm also stuck in a job for 10 years that I don't enjoy, or I see this relationship going towards a direction that maybe if I get married or if I have kids, like this is going to be off. I'm going to be tied up forever, right? Like there's all sorts of situations that people are stuck in, but they also feel this fear. Like, what would you say to those people facing something like that?
Yeah, I mean, the fear is normal, right? And that's what traps a lot of people in the matrix is this fear of the unknown. For me personally, I realized, hey, it can't get any worse. I can only go up from here. And let's say I take some time off and it's a disaster, I can always come back. I'm not
Mhm.
losing but I
Mm.
have everything to gain. And for me, it was like, well, why not just try it? I'm already at the bottom. Like, so
Mhm.
I think that's just for people to examine is like, well, what are you afraid that you're going to lose? Are you really going to lose your job? You can always come back and work again. That's always a possibility, like you might stay in a job and they might lay you off,
That's
and
right.
then you're really blindsided. So you might as well take a risk and do something you enjoy doing and if you're settling for something that's a 5 out of 10 or 7 out of 10 just because you're comfortable, you have to realize that you're passing something that might be a 10 out of 10 and you don't know if you
Mhm.
don't try.
Yeah, my reframe for that has always been like, I try not to get to rock bottom before I'm forced to make a change. I try to future project, like, if this goes on like this, how bad is it gonna get? And I'm really scared of that possibility. Like you said, if I'm staying in this job, well, how bad could it get? It could get to a 0 out of 10. Well, I'm terrified of that prospect. So when it's a 5 out of 10, I'm already gonna jump ship because
Mhm.
I'm not gonna let it get there. That sounds terrifying.
Yeah.
So I kind of like flip it on its head. And I feel like that's been one sort of superpower for me is being able to make the fearful decision before it becomes like almost a life or death decision.
Hmm. Yeah, I would say you're unique in that. Most people don't change until it's almost like
They
forced
have to.
upon them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm actually really curious about your origin story, I know you went to school, I think, for engineering, right?
I studied electrical engineering. So I consider my life like started when I was 22 when I graduated college because everything up to that I had to follow the rules of my parents or the restrictions that were placed on me, right? As not an adult without my own money, I just don't have the agency to make decisions fully for myself. But after that, like I never took a penny from my parents again, and they weren't gonna give me any anyways, which is actually a good thing. I'm glad about that. But also I could make my own choices, right? So I always knew that I wanted to travel the world, work online, help people, make an impact. There was a vision for myself of people on YouTube that I saw like traveling in Thailand, living it up while they're in their 20s. Not like when I'm retired and I'm 60, now I'm gonna go to Thailand, right? So I always felt called to do that. I had no clue how I was going to do it. But yeah, I mean, it was, for 1 year I lived in Mexico as a teacher. So that was cool, but it was only a 1 year contract. So I had to go back to the US and find some gig. And I worked at Oracle for about a year, technically 8 months. I was one of the first people to quit out of my class, the group that I was hired with.
And that was
And
a
that
big deal. We'd
really
worked hard to get to Oracle. It's like has a good reputation, you
good
know?
reputation, good salary, good office, good healthcare. Like, parents love to brag about it. Like, my son works at Oracle, right? Like, it's this thing that if you listen to societal conditioning is everything you should ever want. But I went to the office every day and I was miserable. Like, there was nothing to do. There was no structure. There was nothing to learn. I was just bored out of my mind. We're just playing ping pong and drinking free sparkling water every day, which you would also think is great. But like, come on, like I
Right.
went through the hardest major at my school, electrical engineering. It nearly killed me. And for all
Yeah.
of that, I got to an office where I had to apply myself 0%. It's like, this is retarded. Like, what am I doing with my life? And it's not meaningful. It's not fulfilling. You're not growing. And I'm not getting anywhere closer to my goals. That's the problem, is that I'm still stuck here in this office dreaming about traveling the world. Fast forward like 8 months, I found a remote job and I was like, I'm taking off. I'm going to Brazil. The really funny part that stands out to me is that like when I did that, when I was about to quit and I told people what I was doing and I put in my 2 weeks, like people were like, "Oh, like I wish I could do that." And in my mind, I'm like, "What do you mean? Why don't you just do it?" And they're like, and there's also other people that are like, oh, like I don't want to quit before like 2 years because you want to show that you're like committed to the company. It looks good on your resume, right? Like again, another thing in my brain that I was like, I don't give a shit. What do you mean? Like if I'm good, a company's gonna hire me. Why do they care how long I committed to another company, right? Like none of that ever added up to me. So I just did things on my own terms and a lot of people who I see as or everybody who has the capability to do pretty much whatever they want or whatever I've done or whatever suits their goals because of these fears have let themselves become shackled and stayed in the spots that they don't want to stay in for years and decades and years and then they end up very miserable. So I've always tried my best to follow exactly what I think is right despite a lot of pressure from society or my parents or what would be deemed as the thing you're supposed to do. And I think that's made me overwhelmingly happy with like the choices and the path that I've come on.
And paradoxically, if you leave your job for however long, 1 year, 2 years, and it shows that you've traveled, companies actually like that. It makes you stand out more. So it's one of those things where you were feeding your soul, and if you needed to show your resume, it would actually make you stand out more than someone
Well, I
who
would say it's
like,
the right companies, right? Because if a company judges you for having a year gap in your resume where you actually added value to yourself as a employee, what kind of company is that? Why would they judge you on your timeline as opposed to the value you bring to the company? Like now that I'm a company owner, I don't give a shit. No high school, no college. You work at Dairy Queen. If you show me that you can do the thing that I need you to do and bring value to my company, you're hired. Like you're the person.
exactly. So that's just kind of how the matrix can enslave people. Like, let's say, people are like, oh, I wish I could do that, but I actually need to stay 2 years here. So they stay 2 years, they're miserable, they're draining their energy, they lose themselves. Now that they're ready to leave, the job that they're looking for is going to reinforce that philosophy that I need to work at a place that has no gaps in my resume. So it's just
Yeah,
like
gets
continues
worse.
to enslave them. So when they look at you and they say, well, I wish I could do that, well, the question is, well, why can't you do that? What's stopping you? Is it your limiting beliefs? Are there
Yeah.
financial things? Like, why is it that you wish you could do that? What you need to ask yourself, what's holding you back? And then you, instead of saying, I can't afford to do that, because that shuts your brain down, you
Yeah.
have to the question and say, well, how can I afford to do that?
Mm.
Now your brain starts looking for solutions instead of looking for problems. That one line came from Rich Dad Poor Dad, and that one line has really changed my life in so many ways. I never tell myself I can't afford something. I say, how can I
Mm.
afford it? And I start looking for solutions. And when you start looking for solutions, you'll find solutions. When you start looking for problems, you'll find problems. So the whole thing is always a self-fulfilling prophecy. So that's why waking up is the most important part. Like if just one person is listening to this and like, wow, I really want to quit my job, but I don't know how. You don't need to know how. You need to know
Yeah.
why you want to quit your job. And then you'll
Yeah.
figure out everything else along the way. I walked away from a six-figure pharmacy job to go camping. I didn't know what I was doing,
Uh-huh.
you know, but it was the best decision I ever made in my life because I felt good about it and I just followed that feeling.
I was about to ask a question, something along the lines of like, how can people go about breaking out of the matrix? But then part of me was thinking like, I don't think it's something that people wake up and think. I think, it's more like you just feel an increasing sense of discomfort and unease and like miserableness that you just
Mhm.
can't get away from. And at least for me, I think I always believed that it was possible for me to live whatever life I want or whatever life I see other people doing on YouTube or Instagram like that. I felt compelled to. I don't know. What do you think is the key for people to break out of the matrix, or what are the sort of the phases, if you will?
Well, it's funny, like if somebody says, "Well, how can I break out of the matrix?" But that doesn't mean anything. It's like you said, it's that feeling you have to have within you. And if I tell you, well, first you need to do this, first you need to do that, it doesn't matter. The biggest thing you need to do for yourself is ask yourself, what do I want to do in this life? And if
Mhm.
path you're on right now is that taking you closer to your goal or farther from your goal? One of the biggest traps of the matrix is retirement. They give you this promise, like work for us your entire life, 40 plus years. And then when you're too old and decrepit to come into this job that you've been doing for 40 years, now we're going to pay, you're going to have this money that you saved up and you can do whatever you want now that you're no longer useful to us. Guess
Mhm.
what? You're going to be going to doctor's offices. You're going to
Mhm.
go to the kidney doctor, the heart doctor, the psychologist, all these different doctors. That's how you're going to spend your day in retirement.
Yeah.
Or, maybe if you have a family with grandkids, you're going to spend time taking care of the grandkids, but you're not living for you. So why would you give your entire life force energy to a company that may let go of you at any time or in
And
their
it's not that
mind,
much money. Most people can't
yeah,
like let's say you retire on like $1 million. Like it sounds like a lot. It's not a lot for like 30
or
years or something with
yeah.
inflation and taxes. Like you're gonna pay like 30% of that in taxes out, inflation. And before there was like pensions and shit, like some kind of recurring revenue that you would get income from every month. Now it's 401k, which is put it in the stocks that you choose, even though you're not a financial like expert. Hey, why don't you take care of your own retirement? And most people don't know how to manage these funds anyway, so they fuck up all the money they
Mhm.
put in there. And by the time they retire, it's, barely even doubled or maybe tripled. They have a couple 100,000 maybe.
Yeah, plus the stock market's all made up. It could go to zero at any day.
For real, exactly. Like with
That's
the
that's what you're
Trump
waiting
tariff
for.
thing, like a lot of people's net worths just cut in third, probably, or in half in a week,
Exactly.
Like it happens all the time.
And that's what the pandemic showed me is anything can happen at any time. People could just die. So why put off your happiness for 40 years in the future? So you need to say, what are my goals in life and what can I do to get there now? And maybe that's as simple as take a gap year, take a few months to yourself to just get out of this matrix with all this societal programming and take time to yourself. Go into
Hmm.
nature, journal. Try to understand what is your gift for this world because every person comes to this world with a unique gift. And it's probably not inputting values into a spreadsheet, you know? Maybe for some people, maybe for some people it is that. But for most people, it's like you have to ask yourself, if money didn't matter and if I couldn't fail, what would I do? You know, that's kind of what I help
What a
people
great question.
with. Yeah, is finding their purpose and how can you actually implement steps to get to your purpose? How can you live a fulfilling life? And that's the point of life, isn't it? Do what you want to do, not do what your boss
Mm.
is telling you to do. So it's really getting to that point where you're fed up with everything around you and you're just like, I need to do what's right for me.
So if I had to sum up so far this conversation, it seems like, in the first phase, you're probably going to feel very miserable, stuck in a rat race, just doing things that you don't want to do, going against the grain, like you don't even want to wake up, right? Out of that state, if you're in that state, what you should do is get out of that, like maybe even take a temporary break or vacation, go into nature, like you said, a place where those influences aren't nearly as strong, and then ask yourself the key question, what do I want? I really think that's the key to this awakening, this consciousness, because most people stay in this miserable state because they don't know what they want. So they're just going to stay by default where they are because they don't know where else they would even want to go.
Yeah, and I think the way the Matrix is set up right now, it's like you have to work to survive. You have to work just to have a roof over your head, just to have food on your plate. You know, you need a car to get places. Well, that costs money. You need to put fuel into the car. So everything around you is requiring money. So you feel like you're tied to your job because your job gives you health insurance. It helps you have a place to live, it gives you food, and it keeps the lights on. So we feel like we are tied to this job. And if we leave this job, we're going to die. And that's another trick of the Matrix. But there's actually so many ways you can break out of that. You know, one is obviously good financial planning. So you maybe have to figure out, okay, am I living within my means? How much money can I make here? How much money can I make there? But there's a lot of programs where you can travel to other parts of the world and work not for free, but like work at a place where they give you housing and
Yeah.
maybe you help with their farm or you help teach English or you help build something. There are opportunities where you can live places and not need $1 million to break out of the matrix. You know, there are options out there
Mhm.
and it's just good for people to start thinking like that. Again, like how can I afford it instead of oh, I can never break out of the matrix. It's like start asking yourself these questions. And one of the huge benefits is if you're living in the US or Europe, your currency is stronger than anywhere else in the world. So
Mhm.
you can go somewhere where the cost of living is like a fraction of what you're paying. So you only need a little bit of money to have the kind of lifestyle that you really want to have. So these are the kind of things that people need to start thinking instead of, oh, well, I have to work to live. Like, no, that's a trap. That's the Matrix making you think that.
This is an interesting point that I just thought of, which is language, because a few of the words that keep people stuck, for example, like you just said, have to, right? Or should, right? Whenever I hear these things, I think to myself, like, okay, who decided you have to, or who decided you should, right? Is that a real rule? Like, and then like the other frames that you introduced, like, instead of can I do it, it's like, how can I do it, right? The way you speak to yourself, the code, the program that goes through your mind dictates the choices that you perceive to be available to you, which that's another way that I would define the matrix is because the matrix is really just lines of code, language that have been seeped into our minds, and we think in this language without even realizing it. So it's like a fish swimming in water. You don't even realize that the water's there, but you're surrounded by it. And if you really like take time away, question the language, the code that's in your mind, then you start to peel apart like, oh shit, I've been following all these invisible rules that don't actually make any sense and I don't have to follow.
Yeah, and the movie The Matrix was so powerful because it kind of planted the seed that, hey, this reality is not as it seems. You know, this whole
Mhm.
thing is a hologram. You know, when you think about that, it's so interesting. Like everything that we interact with that we think is real is actually a hologram. Like it's coming in through our eyes and our brain is
Yeah.
processing.
Yep.
Like
Yep.
this wall, for example, right? Like this seems solid. But if you zoom in on the atoms, you'll see that it's 99.9% empty space.
Empty space. Yeah.
It's just electrons vibrating. That's
Yeah.
everything is
Yeah.
vibration.
Yeah.
Everything is
Yeah.
just light that has certain densities that seem to be solid. And this is all part of the illusion, and that's why in my path, psychedelics have been so eye-opening, is because I can
Mm.
kind of realize that, wait, the reality that I think is real is really just a hologram. It's all perception,
There we
right?
go.
So our mindset is really important. The words that we use is really important because that's the lines of programming that we are constantly feeding ourselves. So the whole thing is like it's a labyrinth. It's a journey. It has twists and turns, and we're trying to just make our way through it. And asking these questions, having these discussions is the best way to start realizing that you're a fish swimming in water. You're surrounded by this thing at all times, and before you were blind to it. But once you see it, you can't unsee it.
I love the line from Morpheus, like, you have eyes, but you've never seen. And it's like, yeah, like we all think we're awake. One of my biggest realizations was that like we all think we're free. Like as humans, we would like to think that we are free agents. Like I'm choosing to move my arm. I'm choosing to walk to the kitchen and eat a sandwich. And I am, right? I'm choosing this job. I'm choosing this partner. Yes, but are you aware of the full range of choices that are available to you? Because if you were born to think that school, Harvard, degree, engineering, or doctor, and climb the corporate ladder is the only choices, it's like, yeah, I chose to be a doctor, but the only choices I believed were available were doctor or engineer. Did I realize that any other choice even existed? And if you don't, then you're not really free. Anyways, that's something that I like to think about.
Yeah, and everything is just kind of it's a consequence of something that happened before it. Like that's why we see trauma repeat in families. Like the grandfather beats the son, and then the son has all these emotional
Mm,
problems, and his life
mm.
turns out a certain way, and then he beats his son and realizes that, okay, my inclination is to do this, but why is that my inclination?
Yeah,
Okay, because that's
why?
the upbringing that I had. That's the kind of family that I had that told me these are the things to do. These are the rules that I must
Yep,
follow. But now
yep.
I'm starting to think of myself, and I don't want that life for myself or my kids. So now you have the chance to break free of that. So living consciously is like a huge part of your journey. And there's lots of ways to live consciously. One tool is meditation. Just stop, turn off all this stimulation that we have around us
Mm.
constantly, all the hits of dopamine from our phone, from our laptop, from the TV. Just silence that and go within and try to connect with that stillness. Being in nature is another way where you just realize how small you are in this grand scheme of things.
Oh, wow. Yeah, yeah.
Yoga is another great way. Playing sports, you get into a flow state, like just trying to connect to the true essence of reality. Because everything we have in this modern world is kind of a distraction. It's distracting us from one thing or another. And it's like,
Mhm.
what are you running from? You know? Why do you need to numb yourself all the time? These are the kind of questions you start asking yourself.
Oh, damn, man, you are opening some interesting threads here. Let's touch on meditation real quick, because you're an expert at this. You do guided meditations. Like, tell us a little bit about how you do those. What's the impact that meditation has had for you? Like, if how can meditation help someone become more conscious?
So for me, I started meditating. I think it was like 2016. I was going through a really rough time, and I found this book called 10% Happier. And I was like, okay, that seems like
Feasible.
20% happier. Feasible. Let's see what this guy's story is. And interesting story, as a news reporter, he had a lot of PTSD from being in war-torn areas and had like a panic attack on air. And then you know, realized that he needs to calm down, and meditation was one of the tools that was introduced. And I remember when I first started, meditation was still kind of fringe. It was like kind of weird to meditate, which
Right.
is so interesting that
Because
we
people
used to
think of
think
it
like
as
that.
like, hippies, like,
Uh-huh.
sitting cross-legged, like you have to be some kind of bald dude in a temple. Like what is
Yeah.
meditation really?
Exactly. So it was so like I remember when I was like almost ashamed to tell people that I was starting to meditate at that time. This is like
Yeah,
2016-ish.
yeah.
It's only 10 years ago, but like the zeitgeist has really changed in that time.
Now
But
it's kind of
yeah,
trendy, to be honest. Like
now it's trendy,
green
right?
juice, yoga, and meditation, bro. Everybody does it.
Yeah, it's funny how things change, but I just started doing it. I was like, maybe this can help me, And the thing with meditation, it's not like you sit down one day, you meditate, and then you're like, I'm enlightened. No, it's like the whole thing is a journey, right? So it feels
Uh,
like you're doing nothing. It's kind of like going to the gym. You pick up a weight, you're not going to see your bicep just explode. But if you keep doing it over time, you're training that muscle, and then you're going to start to see the gains, same with meditation. So
hmm
I started to notice that I was being less reactive. Things that used to
Mm.
trigger me. Again, these are patterns that had formed throughout my childhood. When something happens, immediately I'd get triggered. My sympathetic
Hey.
nervous system would go off.
Yep.
Now meditation gave me a second to like just pause and decide like, you know what? Maybe I don't want to do that. So it starts to give you
I
that
love that.
space. For me, I started to go in deeper and just realize like, okay, there's a stillness within me. And when I tap into that stillness, I feel
Mm.
calm, I feel
hmm
peace. I start to know myself. And that's just kind of all the journey's been. And when you meditate, your left hemisphere and your right hemisphere, start to connect. They start to talk to each other, and then you start to calm down.
Mm.
And when
Mm.
you're working all the time, you're kind of like, you're like, buzz,
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
buzzing.
yeah.
But
Yep.
this helps just like calm you down. So that's the first step. And then just start to live slower, start to be more conscious, start to notice the things around you. Then you can start being grateful for the things you have in your life. And then once
Mm.
you're grateful, the universe starts rewarding you for more things to be grateful
And
for.
true.
And then you realize like, wow, this life is amazing. Like 10 months ago, I was miserable and just complaining about everything. And now, on the surface, maybe my life hasn't changed that much, but I feel better. Life seems to be working for me, not happening to me. And that's kind of been my journey with it. It's just like diving in and, I listen to a meditation before I go to sleep. And I'll maybe listen to one in the morning and then just kind of do my own. And then about, I don't know, maybe a year ago, I realized like, you know what? I want to start helping other people with this. I've listened to so many meditations. Let me just start putting out my own meditations on YouTube and let people who want it find it, and then
Yeah.
start doing events for people in person who want to come together. And that was a huge uh, thing to overcome because in my mind, I'm like, who would want to meditate? Who would want to take time out of their day to come meditate with me?
Yeah.
Who am I to do this? Those limiting thoughts come.
Yep. Yep.
But then I realized it's not for me. I'm trying to connect people to the great divine that they have within them. I'm
Yeah.
just a channel. So it has nothing to do with me. So I killed my ego. I was like, I don't care if zero people show up because it's not about me. I'm
Yep.
just kind of the shepherd for them on this journey. It's funny, the universe just started rewarding me, opportunities came my way to record meditations and I was getting paid for it. And I was like, wow, this is all just like coming together so beautifully. And it's just something that I enjoy doing because I've done it for so long. And people tell me, hey, Martin, your voice is really good at this. Like, it really helps me
It
calm
is.
down.
Yeah.
And that for me is just like, just more validation that I'm on the right path. And again, it's not about me. I'm just kind of the vessel that's helping move people to elevate their consciousness. Because if all of us start elevating our consciousness together, then humanity can start to elevate its
Mm.
consciousness. Because we've been in kind of a dark age, it feels like, where we still have poverty, we have a huge wealth disparity, we have war, why do we have these things? It makes
Mm.
no sense. We're all human beings. We have been manipulated into thinking that money is the most important thing. And it's not. You can make $300 million in this lifetime, but is your soul growing?
Uh,
What is the value of money when you die? Nothing. It's
yeah.
what is the value of money right now? Like, this is a perceived belief that it has importance, but if you're cold, you can't wear money as a
Yeah.
jacket.
Yeah.
Maybe you can burn
You're
it.
lonely. You're lonely. You can't hug money, right? If your
Exactly. You can't
children
eat.
die, money can't bring them back.
Exactly. You can't eat it as sustenance. It's all a
hmm
perceived value. So
Yep.
again, you need to ask yourself, what is important in my life? Why do I think I need money? Really, what you probably want is connection. You want abundance. you want experiences. And these are all things you can do with or without money. Money is not our God, and we've been kind of tricked into that. So,
With regards to meditation, I would say one, it's helped me still my mind a lot. So it slows everything down, which, like
yes.
you said, allows you to not react instantaneously to things. Like, oh, they said this, I'm angry now. Or like,
Yeah.
this thing happened, fuck, I'm depressed now. Like you can kind of pause in the middle and decide how you're going to react to it. Another thing is you go more inwards, right? You're less focused on the outworld and you're more focused on the inworld, which most people are not. Like we're all mostly trained to be focused externally, but when you go inward, you realize that you have a lot of the answers inside already if you can just like trust and listen to that internal voice of truth, which I personally use as my guiding compass for all my decisions in life.
Yeah, like sorry to interrupt, but if you look at our modern world right now, it's all marketing. It's all there's a void inside you. You need to buy
Yep.
our new product and then you'll feel
To fill
happy.
that.
Buy
Yep.
our new car. Look at the tech we have. And it's in every
Mhm.
single commercial. They look so miserable and then they present them with this product and they're like, "Yeah, now I'm happy."
Mhm.
And that has all been a lie that's been sold to us. Nothing on the outside is going to fill that hole on the inside, you know?
Yeah.
Deep spiritual work that needs to be done to grow and to fill that void, you know? So meditation helps you go inward and check in with yourself. How's my heart rate? How's my breathing? How's my emotion? How's my mindset? What's bothering me? You know, what do I want in this life? Visualization is another part of meditation. Like, where do I want my life to be? Like,
Mhm.
I'm so like honestly, I'm so blessed. Like everything I've wanted in this life, I have, and meditation and visualization has been a big part of that because I give
Yeah.
myself the time to check in with myself and to visualize what kind of life I want for myself, and then I can see what is my progress towards those goals without trying to rush it, knowing that everything will happen in its own divine timing. It's just another reminder, like if you visualize, oh, I want a fast car, I want a big house, you can get those things, but it's not gonna fill that void within you. It's like, what is the
Mm.
thing one level deeper that you really want? Is it love? Is it respect? Is it closeness? When you visualize, it can be very easy to be egoic and feel all the things that I want. But I like to say, like, how can I serve others? How can I be
Mhm.
used for this bigger process that's going on? Use me in the ways that I don't even know I can be used. So that's just another way that you can start to feel more fulfilled and that sustenance.
So I think this is a great place for us to kind of conclude and sort of sum everything up together. So if someone's feeling stuck, miserable, in a cycle they can't break out of, right? What would be kind of your sort of closing remark to them if they're in this state and they just don't know the way out?
Yeah, I think it's going to be different, you know, for each person. So my advice is the first thing that I would like to do is to journal. Well, if I don't journal, let's say, all these thoughts that I have are just on loop. They're on repeat.
Mm.
Oh, I'm
Hmm.
not making enough money. Oh, I'm not happy. Oh, I'm not in the relationship I want to be. It's just on a loop all day long. And you feel it. When I journal, I can write it all out. I can go elaborate as much as I want to. And things that I'm not even consciously thinking of can make its way onto the paper. Now I can see it. Now it's out of my head and it's on paper and it's not as powerful when it's on paper. When it's in your head, it's like the puppet master. Do do do. When it's on
Mm.
paper, you can see it, so you're giving yourself that space. So that's the
Yep.
first step that I like to do is write it all out. And it's funny, like so sometimes that can seem like such a daunting task. Like I don't have time to write. I don't have the energy to write.
Hmm.
But by not doing it, it's actually draining your energy more. So I really recommend 5 minutes, 2 minutes, even if it's just 2 minutes, just sit down and write for 2 minutes. Start something on your phone. But you might be surprised after 2 minutes, you know, things start to flow. Maybe you'll
Yeah, it
want to do
starts
five.
flowing. Yep.
So that's the first step is just let it all out so you can see what are the emotions that you're dealing with, what are the stories, what are the patterns, what's coming up. Okay, now that I see it on paper, what do I want? What
Mm.
is it that I want? Now you can start writing all the positive things that you want in your life. So now you have kind of where you are and where you want to go. And
Hmm.
that's now is the bridge. Like now you want to start to build
Ah,
like
cool. There's
yeah,
clarity now.
exactly. And that's, something that the next step is, well, if you don't think you can do it alone, who can help you get there? What mentors are there? What are the resources? Sometimes just seeing people on YouTube live the life you want starts to normalize it.
Yeah.
Like you're working in a 9 to 5 job in a cubicle surrounded by middle-aged people who are just miserable with their
Yeah, they
life. They're
don't
not
believe the same thing, so it's hard to break out.
exactly. You're going to start to think, well, who am I to leave? But if you start exposing yourself to people who are doing the things that you want to do, now you're normalizing that. And now
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
more believable, more achievable, you
Mm.
know. Then you got to start taking some risks, start to do things that scare you a little bit to break out of
Mhm.
that comfort zone. Because if
Yeah.
fortunately, there's no growth when you're comfortable. You have to push yourself outside the comfort
Hmm.
zone
Hmm.
to have that growth. But you have a plan, you know where you're going. And that's it. The next part is just realizing it's a journey. It's not an overnight thing that just boom happens. The
Hmm.
whole thing is a journey, it's a trail. And you don't start at the top of the trail. You have to start at the bottom of the trail and you have to walk the
Hmm.
trail. And then, it's a journey. Sometimes you might want to take a different path and take the scenic route. And then sometimes you get to the peak and realize, oh, wait, there are way more peaks this way. So it's not a destination, it's a journey.
Yeah. Wow, nice. That was actually really concrete in terms of a couple of steps. I would say if you're feeling miserable, if you're feeling stuck in a cycle, in a rut, that's the first sign to slow down and start questioning things. Most people don't take the time to question why they're in this frantic circular pattern. They just continue it. It's like this sugar high, this like roller coaster. But if you could just stop for a second and start questioning, like critically questioning, like, what are the assumptions I'm making here? What are the rules that I'm following that may or may not actually be real rules? Like, what are the fears I have about doing something differently, right? If you can start questioning the baseline assumptions that you're operating from that's creating this life, you can start deconstructing it and realizing that all of that's made up and you can build whatever life you want to. That for me is the critical piece where everything crumbles. It's like when you see the first crack in the matrix and is when you realize the whole thing is all made up.
Sometimes we think we need our jobs, but your job needs you more than you need your job. And that's something from this Severance show that I picked up. But it's really true. Like we think we need our job, but it's the job that needs us. And that's just a reminder about how powerful we are.
Mm.
The trick of the Matrix is to make you feel small, is to make you feel like you don't matter, is that this job is the only reason that you're able to be alive and to feed yourself and your family. But we're all powerful if we choose to be.
That was a very powerful closing statement there. Well, bro, thank you for being here. That was really nice. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, man. And if anyone wants to get in contact with me, I'm on Instagram, Martino Tranquilo, and on YouTube, I have guided meditations if people are into that. Let's keep doing this. Let's just spread the
Yeah,
word
dude.
and break people out of these self-built matrices.
I'll link your Instagram and your YouTube down below so people can contact you if they're interested in having any sort of conversation with you. Yeah, and thanks for being here, bro. We'll catch you guys, the guests, on the next podcast. See you.